I'm shown as a panelist. Does that mean anything?
That is correct. As a panelist, each of you can mute and unmute yourselves.
Okay.
We also have attendees, which is for like members of the public who want to listen in.
Okay.
They don't have the ability to just chime into the conversation.
Got it.
All right, I will now call to order the Charter Commission special meeting of Thursday, July 9th, 2020. The first, what we will do first is do a roll call of the members present. Denise, could you do the roll call, please?
Thank you. Be patient with me as I'm referencing my list and trying to see people's faces. Axtell?
Here.
Jack, are you there?
I am. I didn't hear you.
Okay. Ronald Bonds?
Here.
Jim Goodermont?
Here.
Kathy Gustafson? Cynthia Hunt?
Here.
Bronna Lindell?
Here.
Tom Nelson? Grant Peterson?
Here.
Steve Peterson?
Present.
Here.
Jay Taylor?
Present.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, here.
Oh, there we go. Harry Witherby
Here.
and Roger Willett.
Yes.
So I show Kathy Gustafson, Nelson, and Roger Willett are absent.
All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our last meeting of June.
May.
7th, 2020. For those of you who are present, are there any questions or changes to those minutes?
I didn't hear which minutes?
From our last meeting,
From our May 7th, 2020.
May 7th meeting.
That was not the meeting, that was or the annual meeting. Yeah.
What's that? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Peterson, was that second by,
Lindell.
okay, Lindell? We will now do a roll call vote.
I don't know if everybody else is having this trouble, but things are going in and out. Is anybody else?
Yeah,
Something going on with.
Yeah, it's going in and out. I'm not hearing everything.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if people maybe mute themselves except when they're talking, that might help too.
It typically helps, yes. Okay.
so we'll watch that, and then if anybody missed something, just feel free to chime in and, ask for a repeat on it. All right, we're looking for the roll call vote then.
Thank you.
On the minutes.
Rod Axtell?
Aye.
Beloga?
Aye.
Barnes?
Aye.
Goodermont?
Aye.
Hunt?
Aye.
Lindell?
Aye.
Grant Peterson?
Aye.
Steve Peterson?
Aye.
Stanley?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Weatherby?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. On to item 2.2, our main business for this evening, discussion on unfinished business related to ranked choice voting. If I could ask Melissa Manderscheid to provide some background on where we're at today, some of the history of what happened at the last meeting, or starting with sort of the council real briefly and what they sent to us, where we ended up at the end of the last meeting, what are some of our options are this evening.
Right, Chair and members, if you're not speaking right now, if we could mute the lines, that way people might be able to hear me a little bit better. I will try to be brief and succinct. I think that for those of you that were unable to attend our last meeting, I want to give you a little bit of background. There was a public hearing on May 18th before the City Council to act on an ordinance that was calling for a ballot question to amend the city charter to adopt ranked choice voting for municipal elections in Bloomington. This public hearing occurred on May 18th, and the City Council thereafter unanimously adopted that ordinance. Pursuant to state law, that ordinance was then sent to the Charter Commission for a 60-day review period. We are now currently in that review period. This day 60 of that period is July 17th, 2020. The ordinance that was sent again is to place it on the ballot in November. The Charter Commission first met on June 11th to consider that ordinance that was sent to it from the City Council, and a public hearing was held. Approximately 30 people participated in that public hearing. 15 of the 15 Charter Commission members on this body, 10 were present. There was a motion to adopt the proposed amendment that was sent to adopt the ordinance that was sent from the City Council, and that received a second, and it was voted on. 5 people voted in favor and 5 people voted against. The rules require a majority vote in order to pass a motion, and because that did not receive a majority vote, the motion did not pass, was not approved. Thereafter, the commission voted 9-1 to adjourn. There was an effort on my part to get the chair's attention, and the chair thereafter sought to reopen the adjourned meeting for the limited purpose of receiving a bit of additional information about next steps. I wanted to make you all aware of the timing and other considerations available at that time, so that we would know about what to do next, given that nothing had been approved during that June 11th meeting. There was a very limited exception in the rules of procedure, of Robert's rules, that allow for the reopening of an adjourned meeting for that very limited purpose of receiving additional information that wasn't able to be communicated during the adjournment process. However, after that, there was some additional discussion, and there were 2 additional votes. Those votes were technically out of order under Robert's rules of order, which are the rules that our body has adopted. We also have rules of procedure. However, those rules of procedure are silent on many things. And so when they're silent, the rules of procedure require that we defer to Robert's rules. And so in consultation with those, I've concluded that those subsequent actions after the adjournment were out of order. And although those votes occurred, they were also, the first one was a 5-5 vote, and therefore it would not have passed either. And so it being technically out of order was essentially a technicality, because it didn't have any impact anyway. But it's as if it never occurred for our purposes tonight. And then the second one was a direction to staff to set another meeting. That too did not technically occur. It was out of order, but it did receive a majority. So moving ahead to more recent times, several days ago, the chair contacted me and asked that we set a meeting for tonight. that was done. The materials that you have before you reflect the contents, largely repeat the contents of that earlier meeting packet materials, with the exception of a few updates that I wanted to just make you aware of. Given the passage of time, it was relevant for me to include the clock, in that the state law has that 60-day review period, and that ends on July 17th. And before that review period of 60 days ends, the Charter Commission, if it wants to, can ask for an additional 90 days. It's important to let you know that, given the fact that that would need to occur tonight, because our rules of procedure require a 10-day notice before a meeting. So we would be unable to meet that notice requirement should there be a desire to call a subsequent meeting after tonight. We wouldn't make it within that day 60 time period. With regard to what happens if the Charter Commission doesn't act tonight, once the 60-day period has ended, the City Council can move forward. The role of the Charter Commission in this process is advisory. As you recall from the materials, as well as from future past presentations from me, the Charter Commission has this 60-day review period, and during this review period, it can either approve the council's ordinance, reject the council's, or it can offer a substitute amendment. Those are its choices. And in the absence of doing any of those things, or of asking for an additional 90-day review period, the City Council can continue forward. The next step in that process is that the City Council would consider ballot question language, and that would come in the form of a resolution. That resolution needs to be acted on within a certain time period in order to send it to the county prior to August 21st, so that it can have enough time to prepare the ballot. The county prefers to get the language sooner than that, and prefers to get it at least a week in advance. It's our preference that it gets it a little bit sooner as well, in case there's any problems with the language or any concerns, that we can have time to work that out. So the last regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council to act on that ballot language is August 3rd. However, the City Council is meeting several more times in August for other not regular business meetings. It could as well call a special meeting if it would desire to take on that ballot language later than August 3rd. We talked about and had a presentation on what is ranked choice voting. We had a couple of slides, as well as some short video presentations from other entities that had prepared them in preparation for their consideration of ranked choice voting. The Charter Commission was able to ask questions at that earlier meeting in June. And then again, we conducted the public hearing, and then that brings us to today. So what I have in your packet for your consideration tonight is essentially what you had in the packet an 11th meeting, with the addition of one more resolution, and that is a resolution extending the review period for an additional 90 days. State law requires that action be done by resolution. And so in order for me to make that option available to you within the given time period, I needed to prepare something and put it in the packet for your consideration tonight, if you wanted it. There's no requirement, obviously, for you to take action on it, but I wanted to make it available for you, given that I wouldn't be able to put together a resolution and get it in front of you at the same time as during the meeting. So of course you can amend that resolution, but a draft of it is included in your packet, as well as the approvals and rejection resolutions that were in the past packet. This brings us to where we are today, and I would stand for any questions that you may have, it's up to where we are right now.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. This is Chris Wilson. I believe I have Commissioner Gustafson having joined us on the line. If you'd excuse the interruption, I'd like to try to bring her into the meeting. Hi, caller. This is Chris Wilson with the city staff. Is this Kathy? Kathy Gustafson, can you hear me? One more time. Commissioner Gustafson, can you hear me? And Mr. Melissa, you can hear me, right?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. The phone number appears to match, but maybe that is not Commissioner Gustafson. So I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Chair.
No problem. We want to make sure and bring everybody in when they're coming here. One item I would add again, and then I'll get to Commissioner Beloga, Council Member Beloga. This evening we did hold the public hearing on the June 11th meeting. This meeting is not going to be a public hearing. However, we did receive a number of communications from residents. And I would just add for the public that's listening and for commissioners as well, that if the communication was sent or copied to the council secretary, then we have all received a copy of those communications. So I just wanted to make that known for the record. At this point, any questions? I'll go to Jack Beloga, please, Commissioner Beloga.
Thank you. I have a question for Attorney Manderscheid. And my question is relative to unfinished business. What is the nature of our unfinished business?
Chair and members, I would defer to the chair, Mark, on that question. That was the word the verbiage that he used in his request for me to pull together this meeting. So I would have to defer to him on that.
Sure. It was my understanding that we had positive actions to take. That is, and I realize there's some disagreement on this, to either approve, reject, or add substitute, provide a substitute amendment to the council. And it was my feeling that due to the early adjournment and the questions about the tie vote and what it meant, that it was important that we, I believe, complete the business and either have a formal rejection of or rejection, approval, or substitute language, or request the continuation as we could have done on the 11th. And
a follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Below.
So did I understand you say that the first meeting required us to consider each one of the three items that were presented?
I don't believe so. It would have, but we had three options, and I believe there was some question as to whether the tie vote was in fact a rejection, as opposed to no action being taken.
Okay, so can we have Attorney Manderscheid speak to that? Because I think we did on the June meeting, and I believe during the course of that meeting that she indicated that a tie vote means a failed vote, that the motion did not pass, it failed.
Chair and members, a tie vote is a failed vote. in that it does not pass because a majority is required to pass any motion. So because it did not achieve a majority, a tie vote is not a majority, it did not pass.
Commissioner
So,
Blogan, go
Well,
ahead.
I'm just trying to understand what's being asked of us tonight. What is the unfinished business that we're here to act on, discuss? Oh, I'm still confused about it.
Mr. Chair, can I take a whack at explaining it as I understand it?
Commissioner Peterson.
So if you go and look at the information that the city attorney provided about the process, we basically have a couple of different options to take. We can approve the proposed language. We can reject the proposed language. We can offer substitute language before July 17th. We can ask for an additional 90 days to review, or we can do nothing. Okay. If we do nothing, the item goes back to the city council and it can adopt a resolution placing it on the ballot. Okay. We have yet to act on to make any of those decisions. None of the motions that we've made have passed yet. So with respect to any of those choices, we haven't chosen any of them. So if we chose today, for example, let's say somebody moved to adjourn the meeting right now and we adjourned and we didn't meet again before that date, the result of that is it would go back to the council and they would be able to adopt a resolution and put it on the ballot. So I think, and I agree with the chair's decision to call this meeting because I would rather have this group make an affirmative decision one way or the other, as opposed to the result of the last meeting causing it to go back to the council and being put on the ballot because we didn't act. So I'll ask the attorney if she's got any kind of feedback on what I said there before we move on.
Chair and members, the role of the Charter Commission in the particular process that we're a part of right now is advisory. The Charter Commission can take none of those actions. It can simply remain silent and not pass anything forward to the City Council, or it can. And at this point, it has not passed anything forward, taken any actions that I would carry forward to the Charter Commission, or excuse me, to the City Council. So there's no requirement that it do anything, but it certainly has the opportunity to do something within those 60 days. The statute does say that the Charter Commission shall approve or reject or suggest a substitute amendment. So you certainly have the opportunity to do those things, or you can ask for more time to review.
Mr. Chair, this is Ronald Barnes. How do we raise our hand here?
Just one comment, Steve. You did an excellent job of framing kind of where we're at today and kind of underscoring kind of how I felt about calling the special meeting, because I do believe that, you know, we ended up with unfinished business. Attorney Manderscheid, did you, so what you indicated to the council would have been that we failed to take action? Is that more or less what the result of our last meeting?
Chair and members, if this meeting had not occurred yet tonight, or if this meeting never occurred, I would have communicated to the City Council that the vote, there was one vote taken. It was not passed, and the Charter Commission did not approve, reject, or offer any substitute amendments during the 60-day review period.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnes, I believe you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. As most of you know, I'm in favor of adding ranked choice voting as a method for electing our local officials. And I first ran into this when we had this joint meeting with council and Charter Commission, and I was impressed with it, but I thought maybe there has to be something wrong with it, and I did a considerable inquiry, and I really don't find much in the way of opposition claims that really hold any water. And so I would like the Charter Commission to take action. And my understanding is that we can renew the previous motion from the previous meeting. And if that's true, I would move renewal of the previous motion. That's a motion, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I'm first going to ask if there's a second, and then we'll go back to everybody's questions. I know there have been several hands up.
I'll second.
And that was
Carrie Weatherby.
Commissioner Weatherby? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I hopefully have this in order here. Commissioner Taylor, then Commissioner Gutermont, then Commissioner Stanley. Let me know if I missed anyone.
Mr. Chair, point of information before you start, which motion is being reintroduced? We had two motions at the last meeting.
Actually, we only had one that was legitimate.
Can you be specific then about which one it is, just so that we're completely clear?
It's the motion to approve that it ended in a tie vote.
Okay, thank you.
And the other two motions were not valid motions, but I thank you for the clarification there. Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Taylor?
I believe he's on mute. Am I alive now?
You are live now.
Okay. It is my understanding that if we had a tie vote, a 5-5 vote at that meeting, that effectively was really a no vote that should have been carried to the council. And it seems to me that based upon the assumption that we were going to have a meeting tonight, that was not done. Am I correct in that assumption?
Chair and members, this is Melissa. I communicated what happened to the city council.
And what was their reaction back?
Chair and members, I didn't ask for or receive any sort of formal response.
Commissioner Gutermont? Commissioner Gutermont, you had your hand up earlier?
No, I didn't. I was having
Okay.
a conversation here with somebody else. Sorry.
All right. Commissioner Stanley, I remember seeing your hand up.
Anderson, just to be clear, when you sent us some clarification of how any of last meeting motions were to be, if they were to be reintroduced, how they needed to be introduced to be in the proper manner, are we at this point, now that we have reintroduced a motion, the one and only real motion and vote from the last meeting, has this been reintroduced in the proper manner?
Chair and members, Robert's rule allows for the renewal of a previous motion when that motion was made and disposed of without being adopted. And that is, in my opinion, what occurred during that June 11th meeting. A motion was made, it was seconded, but it was never adopted. So Roberts allows for the renewal of a previously unadopted motion at a subsequent meeting. And so, yes, it is procedurally proper to renew a motion at this meeting.
Commissioner Axtell.
Just a point of clarification is that for the benefit of, I think, all of us, is that, can you read back that motion that Commissioner Barnes just put on the table?
Chair Thorson, I have that pulled up if you'd like me to repeat that.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. And can everyone that isn't speaking please mute? So the motion made on June 11th was a motion to approve the proposed amendment to the city charter as set forth in Ordinance 2020-17, adopted by the City Council on May 18th, 2020, and direct the city attorney to promptly notify the City Council of the action taken.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions about this?
Well, as a follow-up to that, is that I thought we voted on that. It ended up being a 5-5 vote. So what am I missing here?
The motion, I think I would concur with the city attorney that it meant that in effect we failed to take action. And I understand there's some disagreement about that tie vote. If that's what you're getting at. Commissioner Beloga.
Little different twist. So if you want to continue the discussion, I'd wait for that to conclude. Otherwise, my question is of the attorney is in the city rules of procedure, if a motion fails, and I interpret failing as non-passing, then it cannot be brought up again for another year. Is the rules of procedure for the Charter Commission similar in that respect?
Chair and members, the rules of procedure for the Charter Commission are different than the rules of procedure for the City Council. The rules of procedure, as I read them, do not contain a similar prohibition on hearing something, a 1-year time delay.
Thanks for that opinion. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is Jay Taylor again. I still go back to the question: if we had a 5-5 vote, and according to what my understanding, Robert rules is that is a no vote. And so I guess my question is, why are we going back to something that we've already voted no on? And that's the question I guess I have. And I know this is a contention among some of the commission members, whether it was a no vote or whether it was just a non-vote. And I think it was a vote.
Mr. Chair, Jack Beloga here. I totally agree with Commissioner Taylor's assertion. And it's independent of whether you're pro or con the issue.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of, it's a procedural matter. And I believe strongly that continuing on that track is going to be potentially inviting litigation to come forward on this.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Taylor will get back. Commissioner Hunt, I see your hand up, and then Commissioner Peterson after that.
Mr. Chair, that was my same comment that has been reiterated, that we did have a vote. It failed, but that's brought forward to the council. Why are we reopening something again? I think we are opening ourselves up because it speaks to potentially the case of, okay, the Charter Commission is looking at it again until we get the vote, the positive vote to go through. And I don't know that that's the intent either, but it's just unclear why we had a vote, why it wasn't communicated to that. And then the added question too, or just a comment, we did open the hearing, but why wasn't that made abundantly clear that that was not the correct way to do that? That I think is getting lost in here too.
Commissioner Hunt, I believe it was in retrospect when we realized that we had adjourned the meeting without taking affirmative action or looking at our other options, reopen the meeting. I think it was more in retrospect that it was determined that the action we took after that point was not appropriate. Again, I want to continue the discussion. I know you brought up some important issues. I just want to keep going around, make sure and see if some additional comments can add some clarification to this. And I believe Commissioner Peterson, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, so and I could understand how the situation at the last meeting would be confusing. And I think it's important to note, though, that at the point that we were considering the motion to approve it, the first motion that we voted on, there were 5 different choices that we could make at that point. We could approve a resolution that approved of the language. We could reject the language, which was choice number 2. Choice number 3, we could opt for substitute language. Choice number 4, we could have voted at that meeting to have an extension. Or choice number 5 is we could have adjourned without taking any action, and that would send it back to the city council. Okay, so those were the 5 choices that we had to make at the meeting. And the motion that we were making was whether we were going to select one of those choices of the 5 choices, and the answer was no, we're not going to pick one of those 5 choices. It didn't consider the other 4 choices that we had. So because the motion didn't receive a majority, we didn't pick the choice of approving it, but we were silent about the 4 other choices that we had at the meeting. And so that's, I think, to Commissioner Taylor's question, that's why, because here's the thing is that if, based on the attorney's opinion here, if we leave this meeting and don't make a decision and don't select anything else, it goes back to the council and they can go put it on the ballot. Okay, that's what happens right now if we don't take an action. And I think in the good sense of the chair and looking in retrospect at this, that's not a desirable outcome for this to take. I think it would be better for us to affirmatively either vote in the affirmative that we're going to do it, vote in the affirmative that we're not going to do it, or pick from one of the other kind of 2 options where we're actually making a decision. Personally, I would think it would be a bad thing if we adjourn the meeting and send it back that way. But you can't have a failed motion in a situation like that where there's several choices kind of make a decision like that. That's not the way it works.
And again, Commissioner Peterson, that's where I felt like we had unfinished business, and that's why I called the special meeting. And I regret the confusion and any role I played in the adjournment of the meeting before that business was completed, and I take responsibility for that. Any other comments? Do I see any hands up? All right, so we do have a motion on the table and a second. And I would now request a roll call vote on that motion, and we'll see where that one takes us.
Thank you, Chair. Axtell?
No.
Beloga?
No.
Barnes?
Yes.
Hunt?
No.
No,
Lindell, Commissioner Lindell, I think you're muted.
Okay, yes, sorry.
Thank you. Grant Peterson,
Grant
Commissioner,
Peterson,
No.
thank you. Steve Peterson,
Yes.
Stanley, Commissioner Stanley,
Yes,
thank you. A. Taylor,
No,
Mayor Thorson,
yes.
Weatherby,
Yes.
if my math serves me correctly, it looks like we have a 6-6 tie.
Another tie vote. So would anybody have a suggestion? Commissioner Hunt?
Mr. Chair, I'd make the motion to reject the language.
Okay, we have a motion to reject the language. Do we have a second to reject the language? And again, this is a different, procedurally, this is different than it not passing. So thank you, Commissioner Hunt, for bringing this option to the table.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Chair, just to be clear, to state the outcome of that last vote on the record, it was a 6-6 tie vote, which means the motion to renew the previous motion that resulted in a tie vote on the June 11th meeting, that motion did not pass because it was a tie vote and a majority is required. So now what I'm hearing is Commissioner Hunt is making a motion to reject, and I'm just want to be clear on the record if that is a motion to adopt the resolution in the packet acting ordinance 2020-17.
That's correct.
And by taking this action to reject, we are still open to the option if there's a commissioner that wants to offer any substitute or an extension. Is that correct or not?
Chair members, the state law guides that the Charter Commission can approve or reject the proposed amendment or suggest a substitute amendment. They could reject the proposed amendment or suggest a substitute. You know, if there's a message that you would like me to carry forward, I can certainly do that. I don't have any particular amended language in front of me tonight to offer up or any direction to have prepared something like that.
So we have a motion on the table to reject. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Axtell.
Axtell? Motion by Hunt, second by Axtell. Could we have the roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Axtell,
Aye.
Beloga,
Aye.
Barnes,
No, no.
Hunt.
Did you call Guterman?
Yep, Goodermunt.
Aye.
Thank you. Hunt,
Aye.
Dell,
No,
Grant Peterson,
Aye.
Peterson, Commissioner Peterson, I think you are muted.
No.
Thank you. Stanley? Commissioner Stanley, you are also muted.
aye.
Thank you. J. Taylor? Commissioner Taylor, you are muted.
There I am.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Thorson?
Did you call Thorson?
Yes, please.
No.
Thank you. Weatherby?
No.
Just tallying my numbers here. Looks like we have 7 in favor, 5 opposed.
So the motion passes to reject then. Melissa Manderscheid, again, I'm not sure I was clear on the last question. So is this the only act we can take, or, and I realize there may not be a motion on the floor or an interest, but this was to reject, and that precludes us from voting on an extension or anything else, correct? I mean, this was a decisive action? Or can we take a reject and see if there's an interest in other words, I'm not making any assumptions about the individuals and the rejection, but is it because there's a concern about time? Commissioner Hunt, you were.
Just rather incredulous at the question.
I just want, I understand that you could
Okay.
be. I just want to make sure we, cover all the options before moving forward. I want to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Chair and members, the statute isn't particularly clear on that point. It indicates that there's a 60-day review period, and then you can ask for an additional 90-day review period. And then the statute says after reviewing the proposed amendment, then, approve, reject, or suggest a substitute. So you've certainly done one of the 3 options that you have available to you. And at this point, I have not heard anyone ask for an additional 90 days. So there's certainly nothing prohibiting you from asking for a vote on seeking an additional 90 days. But at this point, I don't see that the statute requires such a vote. There has been an action taken that I can promptly
Thank you.
communicate.
Mr. Chairman.
That was a clarification I was looking for. And obviously, if there's a vote to reject, then one would question whether adding more time would be appropriate as well. But I just wanted to just cover all the bases and make sure we've discussed everything. Commissioner Barnes.
We have completed the business on the agenda. I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
All right. Is there any discussion? If not, we can do a roll call vote on this item.
Thank you. Axtell?
Aye.
Beloga?
Aye.
Barnes?
Aye.
Goodermont?
Aye.
Oh, and my computer just froze up. One moment. All right, Hunt.
Aye.
I thought I heard your
Said aye.
Thank you.
Yep.
Lindell?
Aye.
Grant Peterson? Commissioner Peterson, you are muted.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Peterson?
Aye.
Stanley?
No.
Taylor,
Aye.
Chair Thorson,
Aye.
Weatherby,
Aye.
Motion passes 11-1, I believe. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Aye.
How do you mute?